Whatever shall we do indeed? Well, actually, that's what this video is about. I'm gonna help you take your palette from this to this. Before we continue though, welcome to my channel. My name is Laura Orango-Bear, and I'm here to teach you everything you need to know about oil painting and realism techniques that I learned in academic school, and I am bringing them to you on my lovely channel so you can learn at home and improve your techniques. Please subscribe below and hit that little bell button if you want to, be aware of whenever I post videos that will be entertaining and teach you stuff. If you liked my opening, by the way, please let me know by commenting below because I took some extra time to do that opening. I'm a huge fanatic of silent films, specifically silent horror films. If you have silent film recommendations, let me know below. And then also, if you know the specific silent film I was referencing in the opening, also comment that below because I want to know if there are other silent film fans out there. And now let's get started. So basically the story behind this palette is, this is my boyfriend's palette, and I believe this is a good decade of forgotten paint on it that was never cleaned off, so this is all rock solid, pretty much. And thankfully, I know exactly how you can clean it off. So if you also have a palette that you completely forgot about, you're considering throwing it in the trash, or maybe you feel bad because it's a really nice palette, so you just hide it in a corner of your studio, fret no longer because I know exactly what you need to do to clean it up. So first of all, don't let this happen. If you painted with your palette, please clean your palette. It'll save you the pain of having to deal with this. I'm actually gonna tell you guys a quick little story. Back in my Angel Academy days, I didn't have a palette. I actually had a glass palette that was kept in a painting box, which was pretty cool. It was pretty convenient because the paint would last a bit longer because it was in a sealed box, which was cool. But my instructor at Angel, he saw that I needed a real palette, quote unquote. Not to hate on glass palettes, I love glass palettes, but when you're standing around in a studio and you're stepping back and forth a lot, it can be a little bit annoying and you can't hold it. So it's a lot nicer when you can actually, have it on your arm and you can mix there. The story goes like this. I was working on my figure painting, and Jared Woznicki, who is one of the main instructors at Angel Academy, specifically for oil painting. You don't get to have him as an instructor until way later, but he was my figure instructor that day, and I remember he taps me on the shoulder because we just had a graduation. There's a graduation every trimester. Short backstory. And a lot of the students were, cleaning out their spaces and throwing stuff out. So he taps me on the shoulder and he asked me, "Do you need a palette?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not? Just lead the way, sir." So he walks me over to the trash bin. And there's this really nice palette in there. And he tells me, "Do you want it?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah, why not?" And he's like, "I can teach you how to clean it." Because, of course, that palette looked just like this guy right here. It looked just like this. It was a disaster. The person who had it never cleaned it. They just added more and more layers on it, and they gave up on it because they were moving back to, I believe it was somewhere in Asia, maybe China, and they didn't want to carry a bunch of luggage. I don't blame them. So they threw it out, and that's fine. One man's trash is another man's treasure. Or, in my case, another woman's treasure. So basically, he told me, "Okay, well, this is what you do." And I followed exactly the steps, which I will be telling you after the story. But I followed exactly what he said, and this is my palette. And I've had this palette now for, God, I think 5 or 6 years? No. Wait. I don't know. I've had it since 2017. So, oh my God, so it has been 6 years. Yeah, I was right. Okay. So I've had this palette for that long, and as you can see, it does have a bit of areas where it's thinner, but thankfully this palette over time has maintained its form, and now it's so lovely. So we're gonna do that with this other palette. We're gonna take it to this level, but full disclosure, it won't get to this level of shininess maybe for a month or two, because that requires another type of maintenance, which I will explain in a different video. For now, this is just a cleaning video. Here's what you're gonna need to get your palette back to the way it used to be. So you're going to need two things mainly. You're going to need a scraper and acetone or alcohol. The original recipe that he told me was isopropyl alcohol, preferably in a higher percentage. So if you can't get your hands on acetone, because this is dependent on what country you're in, alcohol is fine. And it's probably a lot cheaper to get alcohol than acetone, so it works out. This is the acetone I'm using. I'm currently living in Norway, so I got this at the hardware store, basically. So this is acetone, and I got this lovely scraper. We're gonna use that. So, word of warning, if you are using acetone, you are going to have to use gloves, because you should not be handling acetone directly for an extended period of time, because that is dangerous for you. So, keep that in mind. I do recommend wearing gloves. Kitchen gloves work. They have to be a certain material. I can't remember what it is now, but I will write it somewhere around here. But yeah, don't handle acetone, pure acetone, without gloves. And you need a well-ventilated area. And then the other accessory that you're probably going to want is newspaper or cardboard. So I did this. I taped two pieces of cardboard together, like this. Very high-tech. And that's going to go underneath the palette, because all of that grime has to go somewhere. It's much easier to clean up when you have something underneath your palette that you could just, pick it up, put it together, throw it away. Especially if it's acetone. You don't want to be breathing it in, so it's better to just discard it immediately in the proper way. The good thing is acetone also does evaporate, so eventually it goes away. But it's better for it to go away somewhere else where you're not breathing it, right? Okay, so let's begin. And there is one more thing I do recommend, which is a handy-dandy apron. I also use this apron when I paint, but it's just, I don't want to get paint gunk on my sweater or on my jeans. Natrum. How do you know you're an academic student without telling people you're an academic student? Natrum. If you know, you know. Okay, anyway, let's get this party started. Okay, so now I'm down on the ground because that is much easier for me. I do not have a work table yet that I can do this on, so we're going to be doing it on the ground. And I'm going to do the first step, which is I'm going to pour some of this handy acetone all over the tough spots. And I'm going to leave it for about 5 minutes. Then I'll come back to it, and I will show you the magic. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes. It looks a bit like dehydrated, like evaporated, of course, because that's what acetone does. So now I'm going to pour some more, and I'm going to scrape and see how it goes. If this was a failure, I might cry. So here I applied some more acetone and I got to scraping. It takes a few seconds for the acetone to really hit, but as you can see, it's working because look at all of this gunk that's already coming off. It's so satisfying. So when you do start scraping, you're gonna have to do it in sessions where you will be pouring some acetone, waiting a couple seconds, and then scrape, 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 just like I'm doing here. That's basically all you're gonna be doing, and it's gonna take a good while, especially with this palette, since it was just covered in so much paint. Here I'm literally chipping it off because it was just stacks of them. And then just continued scraping little by little, and the entire time, I admit, I was listening to a podcast because I knew this was gonna take a while, and if I'm just listening there to the silence, I might lose my mind. So, podcast it is. What's really great though is it also shows you all the little layers of color that are hiding underneath other colors. Like underneath the white, there was actually a small layer of pink, which I thought was very fun and surprising. I'm guessing this is what home renovators feel like when they renovate a house that has hidden stuff underneath floors. In any case, I did notice that from experience, the white and black pigments, for some reason, are the absolute hardest to remove. As you can see, I struggled with this white corner and this black corner much longer than the rest. The yellow came off like butter, the green came off so easy, the red, super easy, and actually, it came back to life and it started staining stuff around me, so I had to be really careful. In the end though, I was able to get it all off, and then I basically scraped off the varnish, at least a little bit, just to even it out, though I'll probably even it out much better when I start sanding it later. And voila! It's done! It's been scraped, and as you can see, 10 years of paint is no match for acetone or alcohol. I mean, I've done it with alcohol before. This is actually my first time doing it with acetone, and I found that acetone is pretty freaking strong, which is great. But it doesn't matter because, you know, the alcohol would still do it for you as well. So, huzzah! So, the next step, which is pretty important, is you are going to sand it down. I recommend a very fine grain for this because you don't want to leave any visible scratches. If you use a grain that's too big in size, I guess, it will scratch your wood, and that's not nice. You could use a thicker grain first and then go over to the fine grain, but I, for this one, would just go straight for the fine grain to save some time, and then I would recommend using a tack cloth or something to pick up the leftover residue, and then you're gonna oil it out with some linseed oil. And the reason is, if you start using it immediately after you've scraped it, you're going to be making a big mistake. And the reason is, at this point, the wood has basically been dried up by the acetone. The acetone completely dries it out, just like it would your skin, which is why you're supposed to use gloves. I unfortunately only had one glove, so one of my hands is a little bit messed up, which is fine. Nothing a little bit of soap, water, and hand cream won't fix. So if you did touch the acetone, it's not the end of the world. You just shouldn't handle it for an extended period of time. The reason you're going to want to put linseed oil on it, and I recommend doing this for maybe a week just to get that wood back to where it's supposed to be, is so that the oil has time to penetrate into the deepest pores of the wood. Once that happens, you will know, because your wood is going to be nice and glossy and shiny, and it's ready to go. So actually, I will make a video talking about palette care and maintenance, and then I can show you how this specific palette turns out after the sanding and the oiling. 10 years of paint. Look at that. 10 years gone. If you like this video, please subscribe and like and comment. I would really appreciate that. I love talking to you guys, so if any of you actually have a better method for getting rid of a decade-old dry paint from your palette, please comment it. I'm more than happy to try it out. I just know so far this is what has worked best for me, which is acetone or alcohol, and just scraping it down to the core. And if you want to know more about academic techniques, oil painting, oil brush maintenance, anything that has to do with oil painting, realism specifically, and academic techniques, please like and subscribe. And yeah, and let me know if there's anything else you want to know about. I'm more than happy to do tutorials and how-tos on how to do very typical things like cleaning your brushes and all of the good stuff. So yeah, bye guys!